Hey photo people, I'm Allie.
And I'm Lizzie, and we're the Photo Sisters.
Today we are going to talk to you about RAW versus JPEG and what that exactly means.
So if you've been shooting pictures for a while and looking into pro pictures, you might notice that some photographers talk about shooting in RAW or JPEG, and that's the file size that you put onto your camera. So if you go into the quality settings, you will see there's different sizes for shooting in JPEG, and then most DSLR cameras will have the option to shoot in RAW. And RAW is, okay, so first we're going to go the pros about RAW. So shooting in RAW is going to give you raw files, kind of like raw meat. It's not cooked at all. So the pro is that the photo isn't changed at all. It doesn't add any sort of contrast or sharpness to the photo, whereas if you're shooting in JPEG, it will automatically apply lots of different options to it, and it essentially will give you something that already looks a little bit edited, which you might think is great, but then if you don't really like how it looks, then you're kind of at a loss for not having as many options for when you edit your photo, because you can't go in and change the white balance and the exposure as much as you can with a RAW. Now, I'm not saying with the JPEG file you can't edit the files, because you certainly can, but you're not going to have as many options as when you shoot in RAW, and it's also not going to carry the same quality as when you have a RAW file. So when you have a RAW file, you can look over and see that you have all different options as far as choosing the white balance. You have a lot more options for the temperature. If you have to tweak the exposure, you have much more freedom to be able to do so. Now, it's not a get out of jail free card. It's not like you can shoot something and completely change it in editing, but it definitely gives you a lot of more options, and that's why photographers really like shooting in RAW, because of all of the freedom and flexibility that it gives you in editing the files. Now, the one con about shooting in RAW is that the file size is really, really big. So if you're shooting a lot of pictures, you're definitely going to need to upgrade your memory cards to larger sizes or pick up some extra ones. And then, of course, on your computer, you're going to need a lot more hard drive space. So that's the main con of RAW, is that it's a much larger file size, but you gain a lot in the editing that you can do. Now, I just want to add really quickly that you will need specialized software that has the ability to edit RAW files. Lightroom has the ability to do that, and so does Photoshop, but if you are not sure about, the type of camera that you have and the compatibility with your software being able to read the RAW files, then take some test photos in RAW, load them into your computer, and make sure that your computer program has the ability to read and download those files so that you don't get back from a shoot and can't edit them. So that's just the main thing, is RAW is a huge file size, but you have a lot of more freedom and flexibility when you go in to edit the files later on. And what do you shoot in, Allie?
Typically I shoot in small RAW format, but in the very beginning I always shot JPEG because I wasn't really editing photos very much anyway. So for me, it doesn't really matter. For her, all RAW, right?
Yep, I always shoot in RAW. Unless I'm going on a trip somewhere and I really, really only want to bring one memory card with me, but I still pretty much shoot in RAW because it gives me so many more options when editing. And you can even choose the option on most cameras to shoot in JPEG and RAW simultaneously, so that if you ever want to have a little JPEG file to be able to edit or access really quickly, then you can. Since the RAW is a larger file, it obviously takes longer to transfer the files to your computer and edit them, but in the end, I think RAW is definitely worth it, just for the freedom and the flexibility and maintaining image quality when you're editing your files.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.